Hello, everybody out there in UK Crime Bookland. I'm here with Frear to talk about her series and her latest book, Shed No Tears. If you could give us a quick summary of the plot, please, Kat.
Yeah, sure. It almost sounds funny to me hearing it as a latest book because it's quite a while ago now. But yeah, it's the latest in the series. So so it's the third in a kind of Kat Kinsella trilogy, I guess. And Kat Kinsella is a detective quite a young detective with the London Metropolitan Police, and I'm sure we'll possibly go back and talk about the other books. But it's Shed No Tears focuses on a cold case. Which is the first cold case of Kat's career. And it comes about when the body of somebody who was believed to be murdered by a serial killer 7 or 8 years ago actually turns out to, possibly not be. Because of a different place of burial to other victims and also a different method of killing. So they kind of have to go back to the drawing board to make sure that nothing was missed. And what starts as a kind of case review basically opens up. It's hard. It's a hard one because it's hard to talk about Shed No Tears without giving away quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. I think we might as well leave it there.
I was going to say opens up a web of, and then I think no, I shouldn't say that because spoil it for readers. So
yeah, it's an interesting series because they're very tightly woven. I mean, when you start writing lies, did you ever see that it was going to be that tightly written?
No, probably not. I think, with any debut novel, when you're writing it, you don't know if it will ever see the light of day. You don't know if anyone other than you and your mum and your best friend will ever read it. So I was just kind of writing the classic, write the book that you want to read kind of thing, but not really thinking beyond that. And my Sweet Little Lies had quite an interesting, amazing, exciting entry into publishing in that it won the Richard and Judy Search for a Bestseller. So that was all this kind of big whirlwind. And I finished the book in January and it was on the shelves in June, which is, I don't know. Listeners know that. Yeah, it just doesn't happen. I mean, a year is a pretty fast lead time, but often it's about 18 months. So I almost didn't really have a huge amount of time to think about what next. I knew I loved the character. I knew there was a lot of mileage in the character, but I didn't know how it would be received. I didn't know if my publisher would want more. But yeah, they did. And I got a 2-book deal and started writing the second book in the series, Stone Cold Heart. But because of the events of Sweet Little Lies, there was no way that you could sort of just park that and have the character completely move on from it. But it's a challenge because every new book, you have to imagine a reader coming to it for the first time who perhaps hasn't read the others, and you need them to kind of understand the character to a degree. And publishers will always say with any series, every single book needs to stand on its own. You can't necessarily, I mean, God, I've only written 3, but some of the greats where you've got 16, 17 novels, people need to be able to dip in and out of them and get the gist. So it was kind of a challenge to make it that tightly woven, but at the same time not to completely confuse people who are coming to the second or third book.
When deciding on the importance of a family dynamic in a series, what made you decide on that kind of approach, kind of thing?
It's hard to say that there was kind of one light bulb moment. I think, certainly the character of Kat and the stories definitely are not in any way autobiographical, but I come from quite a big Irish family, and sort of, grew up spending every summer in Ireland and spending, time with relatives in Ireland. And I just kind of wanted to write about that, I suppose. But then also to bring this incredibly dysfunctional element into it. And I'd read quite a lot, and actually some of my favourite books, Sharp Objects is one of my favourite books. But a lot of books will talk about sort of the dynamic between mothers and daughters. But I'm not saying it hasn't been done, but I couldn't really think of a sort of something that was really stand out to me of a father and daughter, and how that's a completely different relationship.
In all the books I've read, I would say I haven't really seen anybody else do it in the same way. And as you say, father and daughter is a rarer. Mother and daughter is a more common angle.
Yeah. And she's got a brother and a sister. She's the baby of the family. She very much, idolized her father until the thing that happens, Sweet Little Lies happens. So it was less about what I wanted to do with families and what I wanted to do around kind of childhood experiences, childhood trauma, I suppose, to a degree, and how that shapes you into adulthood. Because there is an element of Kat in some ways, I hope she is. She's very smart and she's ambitious and all those things that you want in kind of a series detective. But she is also kind of stuck in this sort of arrested development because something so traumatic to her happened when she was so young. It's almost like she struggled to go beyond it, and you can see that in the relationship she has with her siblings and her dad. So it was more around that and about sort of the reliability of childhood memories. I think we all kind of have those. We tell those stories about and not necessarily traumatic stories, but just do you remember when this happened? And then your cousin or your brother, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
And the book is kind of about her really questioning if her dad is what she thinks he is, or if she has kind of just built him up to be this kind of bad legend, I guess.
Well, it definitely works over the 3-book series, but this is going to sound like a random question to anyone that hasn't read the series yet. But are you a Spice Girls fan?
I was, yeah, I was. I was. When they broke up, I was probably like 20. I might have been a little bit more than that. So I wasn't particularly traumatized in that way, but I did love them. But I remember, for me, I remember when New Kids on the Block broke up. So that will kind of age me. And I remember that trauma. So I wanted to kind of put that into Kat, and to just put those kind of little anecdotal kind of, to give, for readers to really understand her as a character and to make her real, I suppose. And I think throwing in those types of experiences. And I've had a lot of feedback from readers. The Spice Girls comes up quite a lot, sort of saying, "Oh my God, I remember that. I remember they set up a hotline that you could phone if you were so upset." And I think if you can do that towards the beginning of your novel, it's good to get the readers on side with, "Oh, she's a bit like me."
Yeah, I must admit it was a bit of a strange reference for me because when the Spice Girls broke up, I was only about I'd only just left primary school, so I would have been about 11 or 12, I think. So I wasn't much older than the character, so it's a bit weird.
Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, not that I was a Spice Girl fan, but it's a bit notable because you can always remember the reactions of people. Yeah.
It was huge. I was going to say, was it as big as the Beatles? No, probably not. But it wasn't far off. And it was, the way that Jerry kind of broke them up as well. I just remember even as a 20-year-old it being really dramatic. I think it's the whole Spice Girls friendship never ends thing. And then suddenly it was, no, it does end. It ends really sadly.
Yeah, as complicated plots go, I mean, what was it like writing some of the plot from the point of view of an 8-year-old? I mean, it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah. I sort of toyed with that part for quite a while, and I did in a very, very early draft. I actually did it as proper separate chapters told from the 8-year-old point of view, whereas for anyone that's not read the book, they're kind of the 8-year-old bits are delivered as quite short flashbacks.
Yeah.
Just be part of a scene that will, have a bit of a cliffhanger moment that packs the punch. But they're not particularly long chapters exploring it. And I think that was because it's really difficult to write in a child's voice.
Yeah.
She's quite a precocious child. So I felt quite comfortable sort of writing from her perspective, but to actually translate that into a child's voice. Some people have done it brilliantly, but it's just, not necessarily something that I thought I could do. And it wasn't necessary to the plot, really, for people to understand the ins and outs of, an 8-year-old. They just needed to know the build up to that traumatic event. And I think maybe doing it in very flashbacks kind of gave it a bit more punch.
Well, I only just finished it a few weeks ago, and it worked on audio rather strangely, because I'd read the other 2 books before I read the first one. So yeah,
it's all become clear.
Yeah. Have you ever done that with an author before? Like,
oh God, yeah, all the time. Although I do it, and it's fine. But when I'm recommending other series authors to friends, I always get very, very concerned that they start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Because I do think you kind of need to. I mean, there's Jane Casey's one of my favourite series authors, and I've hopped around with her so much.
Yeah.
And you'll get moments where you just kind of think, no, don't get that reference, or what's going on here. But ultimately, I think with each of the books and with any series novel, the murders, which are 80% of the novel really, are very distinct. And I think that's I was very conscious of doing that, because I knew I was going to have this personal arc ongoing.
Yeah.
So Sweet Little Lies is very much about a murder that Kat's family are or aren't possibly involved in. Stone Cold Heart was a completely different kind of toxic marriage, who's lying kind of book.
Yeah.
And Shed No Tears is completely different, a serial killer cold case. So I knew I had to do I wanted to do something really, really different for each of the murders. So it doesn't just feel that you've got, Kat agonising over the same personal issues and sort of investigating the same type of things over and over again.
When deciding on a cold case element for Shed No Tears, what did that allow you to do that you didn't do in the others?
I mean, it was just, one of the things was, because Kat's quite young in her career, I wanted it to be a bit of a first for her. So it was quite nice for her to be learning on the job in that sense. But also, I mean, it was kind of sort of pitched, and in a lot of the blurbs that went out about Shed No Tears, they talk about this serial killer. But actually, and I am giving a tiny bit away, but it happens very, very early on in the novel. So the serial killer is actually dead. So the serial killer doesn't actually feature in the novel.
Yeah, I would say that's about 5 chapters in, so you're all right.
Yeah.
You're not right. Yeah.
So it's a book that's not about him. It's about the victims, and one victim in particular, a girl called Holly Kemp. And the big thing with her is she's probably not the most likable murder victim that you would ever come across. And that was another conscious thing that I wanted to explore in this one about, I mean, there's, you could talk forever about the way that murder victims, and particularly female murder victims, are presented in the press. It's getting better, I would say. But you know, previous, it was very kind of, you know, if you're sort of middle class and pretty, you get lots of coverage. If you're not as, you know, sort of instantly photogenic, then you just didn't. Holly Kemp is just more, she had a very, she's just not the nicest person. But I think that was kind of a learning curve that I wanted Kat to go through as well, about actually sometimes you just have to investigate murders where, you know, you wouldn't like this person in real life. However, she was a human being and deserves justice every bit as much as, you know, the people, particularly in Stone Cold Heart. She feels, you know, quite an affiliation for the main victim, and, you know, she really takes a lot of that personally. Whereas this one, she's constantly sort of having to remind herself that it doesn't matter, that the victim did some pretty awful things herself. There are reasons why she did, and also, you know, she deserves justice as much as anyone else. So, yeah, it kind of allowed Kat to grow as a character a lot, and I think she does in that book. Actually, she's probably
I would say so.
I think in Stone Cold Heart, she was still a bit of she's a total mess in Sweet Little Lies. Stone Cold Heart, she's still a bit of a mess. And she still is a mess in Shed No Tears, but not quite so much. She's kind of, her relationship with her dad is a bit better, although incredibly fraught still. But they, at least on speaking terms, her relationship is going really, really well, even though that is like a source of drama for her as well.
Definitely unusual,
so she sort of grows in that book, and I think definitely at the end, which I won't give away, she's sort of making some decisions about her life which you just wouldn't have imagined her making in Sweet Little Lies.
Very quick but slow arc at the same time. I mean, she's only 27 as a character.
I tried to think myself, actually. Yeah, she is. I think it was her birthday in Stone Cold Heart. I think it was her 27th birthday. So she was probably 28 in Shed No Tears. Yeah.
So 27 as a sergeant.
Oh no, she's still a constable.
Deciding to make her that rank. Did that allow you to explore some other things that like other areas of the genre don't seem to? Because I know it seems to be a trend now to put people in the right places, but I'd say when you were doing like Sweet Little Lies, they didn't really do that generally. They might have done that by the time you got to the end of the series. More people doing it, but
it was that. I mean, I've been a police procedural nut, book-wise and TV-wise, my entire life. I think I was 12 when the first Prime Suspect came out, and I was completely obsessed with it, and then completely obsessed with Linda LaPlante from then on. And I mention Linda LaPlante because I think what's great about her books is that they are certainly police procedurals. They're so authentic. And I mean, she spent an awful lot of time working with the Met Police, so you would hope there would be. But that was something that was really, really important to me. And therefore, getting kind of the rank right was important to me, because in so many novels, probably more on TV though, you will have, you know, the sort of hotshot inspector or chief superintendent who is going out interviewing witnesses and all these kind of things, and that just does not happen in real life. That's not what they do. They're managers of people, and they ultimately make the final decisions, but they you know, I don't even think an inspector would go near an interview room unless maybe it was somebody, you know, a very high profile thing. So I kind of wanted somebody that was very much on the ground doing knocking the doors, who could be bossed about, who kind of got all the shit jobs, for pardon my language, but you know, from a sort of fictional point of view, they're the interesting jobs, because that's where you go out and you find out about people. So yeah, it was important. I knew if I was going to write a series, I wanted somebody that could actually grow and mature, not just get 1 year older. And you do, particularly when I think back to what I was like when I was 27 to when I was, 32, 33. Your life changes and your perspective changes. But I wanted somebody that was literally doing the dirty work.
Yeah.
And for that to feel real.
Yeah. I would say that you've managed it, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's only about maybe two or three people that have done it in the same way you've done it, and I would say probably they might have been writing at the same time, but it was yours I happened to read first. But as you know, I've been reviewing a while now. Yeah.
Who else would you? Who would you do as a kind of, if you like Kaz, you should also read?
It would have to be Heath the Lodge.
Yeah. She was slightly afterwards, but I've got her new one actually. That's the only one I haven't read at the moment. I've just got the proof, so that's exciting to read. But she's brilliant.
Because I would say that they've got a similar kind of character. There's lots of little characters that are kind of in the same kind of similar position, but you write it in a different way that she does too.
Yeah, but we're similar, I suppose, as well, in the sense that even though it is very much Kat's series, it is a bit of an ensemble piece as well. I mean, Parnell and Steele are equally as important. Parnell particularly because he is kind of, he's her father figure. He is the nice older man in her life. She's grew up in a world of not particularly nice older men. So he's incredibly important. And also Kate Steele she's not really a mother figure, but she is that I want to be her when I grow up kind of character. And because she has, this very difficult life outside of work, that team are her family. So they kind of need to be developed properly and not just kind of props for her. And certainly with Parnell and Steele, I'm really conscious that they get the good lines as well, that it's not all about Kat.
Yeah. When you were developing the series, because I was talking to you before about the Curtis Brown course you're on when you developing the series, what made you decide to have Parnell as this? Because he's a very important character in the series, I think, as what we've just been discussing.
Yeah. It was weirdly sort of born out of, and this isn't, saying anything negative about any other series, but I think I'd read a lot of, particularly where there was a young female character, where they were having constant friction of work around just being treated as a child, a lot of sexism. And I wanted to create a team that actually was just a really nice, safe haven for her to work in with nice people. But I think that team definitely does have a family feel. And in that, like families, they bicker and argue. But there is a real sense that they're a team and they're a family and they really, really support and love each other. I mean, Parnell and Kat, I would say there is, a sort of a love there. So, yeah, I mean, does that kind of answer the question? I think
it does. Yeah. I was just curious because when you're writing a series and you start off, you must have I think things you know that you can't survive just on that one character.
Yeah. And I think because I write, because the series is written in the first person present tense, that's quite an intense tense. if that makes sense. I'm rhyming now.
Yeah.
Because you're in Kat's head constantly, and you're seeing the world through her perspective and no one else's in real time. So because of that, you've got to make sure that you've got at least a few other well-rounded characters, I think, because otherwise it's just, I think it's probably too much to be just in one character's head the whole time and not really understand who the other people are and what drives them and their relationship to her. So, I mean, it's the only way I can write. The book that I'm writing at the moment, which is a standalone, I started that writing in a kind of third person past tense. Just because it was, right, I'm doing something different. I'm going to try different. And it just didn't come naturally to me.
Yeah.
And maybe, I maybe should try again at some point. But I think, you write the way you write, I guess. And I almost feel like I need to jump into the character. And I find I read third person past tense all the time and I love it. But when I try and do it, I just felt a bit detached from the character.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do. I mean, I can never decide what tense to write my own stuff in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important. It is really important.
When you were like on the Curtis Brown course, what made you decide to go down that route?
To do the Curtis Brown course?
Yeah.
You know what? I'd got to the point where I'd started Sweet Little Lies. It was in a completely different guise. In fact, when I first came up with the idea for Sweet Little Lies, she wasn't even a detective. Because I had this, this kind of Linda LaPlante worship. It kind of made me think, yeah, but I don't know anything about the police. I'm not, there's no police in my family. I haven't got any friends in the police. I've been watching police shows since the age of 7 or 8, I think. But I just felt, well, how could I do that? So I started off writing. It was the same sort of story, but it was just told from a girl who believes that her father might have been involved in the disappearance of a teenager many, many years ago. And it was getting on that Curtis Brown course that sort of gave me the confidence to just think, well, no, I can do it. And, talking to people on the course about people in the police are so happy to help you. I mean, there's so much with Google and everything. There's so much information out there, but detectives are so happy to talk to you about the job and to help you get it right, that if you take the time and you really want to focus on being authentic, you can be. And you don't necessarily want, I don't think readers want books that are full of jargon and for you to literally feel like you're reading a murder manual, but at the same time, you want to feel like the person knows what they're talking about. So, yeah, it was going on the Curtis Brown course kind of gave me the confidence to make those kind of decisions. And I'm not sure I had that before. Whereas Curtis Brown, you get into a room, there was, I think it was 12 or 15.
Yeah, 15, I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, and for the first time, I mean, it's the first feedback session was terrifying, but for the first time in my life, I was with other. I have plenty writer friends now, but at the time I didn't. To just be in a room with people who were writing books in secret or, in their spare time as well, and for us to be sharing and giving feedback on each other was absolutely amazing. And you suddenly kind of get this feeling of, oh, right, I could do this then. And I think I needed, there was a lot of structure involved in Curtis Brown as well. It's your feedback session next week, so you've got to have this piece done. And I just felt that I needed a bit of accountability rather than just sort of thinking, well, I'll write on the weekends, but, if something comes up, maybe I won't, because it's not like I'll ever get published anyway. I wanted to put myself into, an environment that made me think, no, you can. It was an intense 6 months though, but I'd recommend it to anyone. I'm
so pleased to hear you say that, because I'm just thinking about applying tomorrow, and it's just given me the confidence to do it now.
Yeah.
Because, I've done the 6-week crime writing course with them, and the 6 weeks I thought is okay, gives you the first 3,000 words, but it's not long enough, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about it as well, which I think differs to most courses, maybe not Faber, but I don't know Faber well enough to say, but because it's 6 months and when I did it, there was a couple of sessions a week.
Yeah.
So you get a really good grounding in actually the craft of writing. I mean, they say from the outset, we can't teach you to write. You either can write or you can't write. And to be, you know, if you're here and you've been selected, you can write. What we can teach you about is, you know, suspense, foreshadowing, you know, what not to do, all those kind of things. But also, it was huge in giving you an insight into the publishing industry as well, which, you know, I had no clue about, no clue whatsoever. But to have, I mean, we had William Boyd came in and talked to us. Jake Arnott was one of our tutors. The Long Firm was like one of my favourite books ever. It was just, you know, there were moments of just sitting there going, what am I doing here?
Yeah. Jaw dropping, because you're talking about Erin Kelly as well, and like
so Erin Kelly was my tutor, which, you know, was such a, all the tutors are fantastic, but it was such a stroke of luck, given I was a big fan and given that her writing is very different to mine, but we're under the same umbrella, I guess.
Yeah.
So she kind of understood the novel straight away. And yeah, that's really helpful. We were talking before, I'm starting to teach a creative writing course myself. And, you know, you start thinking, oh God, but what if someone comes and they want me to, you know, give some feedback on their sci-fi work in progress? Am I the best qualified to do that? And the truth is, you know, that I think with most genres, there are certain rules. It's not scientific, but there are certain, you know, how to keep a reader engaged, and those kind of things. And that's all the stuff that you'll learn on Curtis Brown. So I really will keep everything crossed for you.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm quite nervous because I've got like several projects on the go at once, and doing this as well on a weekly basis is getting to be quite a challenge. But I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
When lockdown started, and you were saying before about how you started and you were doing quite a few of these, how did that change that for you?
How did what change? Sorry.
Doing the online interviews, because you said during lockdown that you'd done quite a few.
Yeah, well, I had Shed No Tears came out over lockdown. It came out in July, so I think we were actually out of lockdown, but, you know, there weren't sort of many physical events going on or anything like that. So, and then it came out, Shed No Tears came out in the States in December as well. So there was an awful lot. And it was good. I was a bit nervous to begin with, and I don't know why, because I don't really, when I've done panel events or stuff like that at festivals, I get a little bit nervous. But you know, not. Whereas I think sometimes it's difficult with online, because you're not quite gauging how you're coming across as much. You're not looking at sort of, you know, blank faces or getting laughs or scowls or once you've done 3 or 4, you kind of get used to it, and it was great because you just do so much more because it's just easier. And there's lots of interviews I did which I probably wouldn't have done if you know, in real life.
Because we met in Nottingham at the Nottingham Book Event. I think that was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You and T.M. Logan, who was a local Nottinghamshire author.
Yeah. I'm the West Midlands. He's East Midlands. Yeah. It was. I mean, he's done so well. He was doing well then, but since then, he's like just gone absolutely stellar. He's got a show coming on. He's the nicest guy as well.
He's lovely, isn't he? Yeah.
His books are real. If I was ever teaching a sort of how to write a commercial thriller, he would be featuring quite a lot. His books are they're so well crafted but they sort of, from a writer's perspective, and I mean this as a huge compliment, they're just kind of so easy to read, and you just imagine that they were quite easy to write because they're so seamless.
Yeah, because he writes it about normal people, and you never know who he's going to write about next, do you?
Yeah. I think this new one's coming out soon as well. But
I really do look forward to reading new people all the time. But how do you find out about new people? Because I find out about them in all sorts of different ways, but I always find out curious about how you find out about new people and who you'd be telling us to look for.
I mean, I guess most of the books that I read now are new proofs that come through, and it is mainly debut authors. So that is probably how I find out about most of the new hot books. But you try to have a balance though of, I love reading debuts and I love finding out about new authors, but at the same time, I always, whenever I go on holiday, which seems like a funny thing to say now because I've been away once in the past 2 years, but usually when I go on holiday, I'd always make a point of going into like WH Smith at the airport and choosing what I want and buying 2 or 3 books, and it always feels like such a treat because normally it's just books land on, come through the letterbox and you think, yeah, that sounds quite interesting, I'll give it a read. Whereas to actually go into a bookshop and think, I'm so excited for the new, X, Y, or Z is brilliant. And to go back to, authors that, people like Anne Cleeves, I absolutely adore her, but I sort of fall behind because I'm constantly getting debuts through.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the first interview this year that hasn't been a debut. So.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
God, so I've written 3 and I've only written 3, but I'm still a bit of an old hand.
Yeah, it's I always make a rule of trying not to read people that have written more than like 10 because I find it really difficult for an interview because of trying to catch up with all of them.
Yeah. You'd probably just have to focus on one novel, wouldn't you, rather than how do you talk about a career when you've written. But then I was watching you interviewed Ellie Griffiths, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, she's prolific.
Yeah, I mean, it's handy with Ellie because she's written so many different series. So I was focusing on her historical series, but she'd written 2 others. So it made it easier because although I've not managed to read all the Ruth series, I was able to focus on the other 2.
Yeah. But I tend to have 2 books on the go most of the time, unless I'm sort of deep in my own. So, I mean, the last debut I read was actually an American author, a book called Blood Sugar by, she's called Sasha Rothschild, and that was absolutely brilliant. But I've also got Kate Atkinson on the go as well, and completely different type of writing. But I try to read, particularly, I'm on the home straight with my work in progress, and I try and stay away from authors who are similar-ish to me because I find sometimes that the voice can start bleeding in, or you just think, oh god, you're so brilliant, why am I even bothering? That sort of self-doubt comes in.
Does that mean that with a standalone, now that you've moved away from the series possibly for a bit, does it make it easier to do that then?
I always I sort of knew that I wanted to have a bit of a hybrid career, and I've always got ideas for standalone, and I just wasn't sure if I wanted to churn out, that sounds quite negative, but to just write that character over and over again.
Yeah.
Even though, some of my favourite authors do it and do it brilliantly, but I suppose, the old you do you, I just don't know if that would be enough for me. So I came up with this standalone and pitched it to my agent, and have been writing it for 20 months because it's a lot. COVID, lots of things. COVID didn't necessarily help, and there are lots of reasons for that. But also, I don't think I realised how different it would be, and how much Kat Kinsella was in my head to then sort of try and get out of her head and into a completely different world. The 3 Kat Kinsella books I write them chronologically, and I edit as I go. I'm terrible for doing that. And I don't move on to the next chapter until that one's perfect and I know exactly what's happening. Whereas writing the standalone, I've been all over the shop. I've redrafted it 7 or 8 times. I've changed points of view. It's actually multi-narrative, which is, the really difference being constantly in Kat Kinsella's head. So yeah, that's it's taken me a little while, shall we say. There's been some interesting conversations with my agent and publisher.
Yeah, with a multi-narrative book, do you find that you end up being in their voice for a bit and then move away and then come back, or have you written it linear in the same way that you've written the?
No, I've tried to, but for various reasons, it just hasn't worked as well. I think with police procedurals, not to sort of strip away the magic of them, but there is, once you've sorted out kind of what the murder is, there is an element of it, right? The plot can write itself to a degree.
Yeah.
Without, you don't want to be hitting all the stereotypes and tropes, but there generally will be the crime scene, the first briefing, the second body. There is a certain kind of beat that people expect. Whereas this one, and I won't go into it too much, but it's quite an ambitious structure. It's multi-narrative. It's sort of held together by almost 5 short stories. It's called Five Bad Deeds, and each of those deeds forms almost a short story that threads into the main narrative. I'm not pitching it very well here. So it's quite a complicated book to write in that sense. But the multi-narrative thing, that's been one of the hardest parts, because about 75% of the book is told from one narrative, and then you've got other narratives popping up with their opinion on that main character and reacting to what that main character has done. But I do find that I get so into the character's head, whoever I'm writing, that it takes me quite a while to adjust back into the next person. So, I mean, but, some people do it brilliantly. And I love multi-narrative. Some people often say, you shouldn't have more than X points of view. But I don't know. I think that there's always examples of people.
Yeah. I mean, in my novel I'm preparing for Curtis Brown, I've got like 10, I think.
Yeah. And that's not... I remember somebody... Because I've got 6. So it's not a huge amount.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a friend about it, and Katerina Diamond. Have you ever had her?
I've heard of it, but I've not had it on yet. We were talking about narratives and how many is too many. And her first book, The Teacher, was a huge. I don't know how many it sold, but and I think she has 10. It's literally she might even have more than 10. It's just every single chapter introduces a new person who has something to say on the main event, and it was, there's never really any rules, is there? The challenge is just making them sound different. We've all read the odd book where there are 5 different narratives and it just sounds like the same person. You have to make sure that that those people are standing out. That is one of the things I do worry about. I can see a number of comments. I don't know whether there's any questions. Can you see them?
No, not questions as such. But somebody saying about I enjoy that point of view, the present tense first person. That's good to know, because some people hate it. Not many, but some people really have an issue with first person present tense. I don't know why. Does it all feel a bit frantic, maybe?
Well, I can't really say, because I'm not used to listening to audiobooks, and it's so often in my head that it's normally like that anyway. So
yeah.
Because I find it a real problem trying to get out of trying to write like that and getting out of the character's head when I'm dictating myself. So I know how you feel there.
Yeah. And that is the issue, I think, when we want to read as writers to learn and develop and get to become a better writer. You want to read great books from writers who really have strong voices. But then if that voice is so strong, it does end up sort of bleeding into your own work. I reread a very old book, Notes on a Scandal.
Oh, I love that film. I've not read the book yet, but I've seen the film about 10 times, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw the film before I read the book, actually. But I read the book about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's obviously written from this kind of quite uptight, well, I think she's probably more than middle-aged, whatever middle-aged is now, I don't know, spinster, kind of very formal. And when I went back to my own, and it's brilliant, the voice is brilliant, she just nails that sort of, she nails that character. But then I went back to my own novel and I was found myself almost speaking in this incredibly sort of formal, almost kind of regal way. It was a bit like, where's that? That's not my character. She wouldn't use that word.
Yeah.
But because the voice is so strong in Notes on a Scandal, it's hard. Yeah, it's almost like you need to sort of back away from it for a few days before you start trying to craft your own characters.
Yeah, have you ever written in a diary form like that book?
Have I written in a diary form? No, I haven't. There's the book that I'm writing at the moment. They're very, very short, but there's a couple of teenagers talking to each other, and I just decided to do that as a WhatsApp exchange.
Okay. Yeah.
There's not many of them, and they're short. No one wants to sort of read pages and pages and pages of WhatsApp exchanges, I guess. But it felt like the best way to kind of show those characters, because they both are in other scenes and you get to know them as people, but they sort of, have their off away from the parents kind of chats on WhatsApp. And I just found that was quite revealing. So I've done that. And you see that more and more, I think, in fiction now with new technologies. But no, I haven't done diary form. I quite like it, though, because I quite like reading that sort of quite formal.
I'm going to have to read it, I think, because having watched the film, and I've just finished reading The Appeal, which was I think that was a legal one, which was written from.
I know the book. I think I've got it actually, but I've not got to it yet. Yeah.
That's very kind of written in a similar kind of style. It's emails, not diary form, but it's close to it.
That's so clever. That is so clever. You must read Notes on a Scandal, though. If you love if you love the film, then the book is brilliant.
Do you ever find that you were depicting the actors in the film then, when you were reading the book?
I hadn't really thought about that, but now that you ask, no, and that probably tells you how strong the book is, that you're just sort of drawn into it. Maybe Judi Dench a little bit, maybe, but not. Who's the other?
I'm trying to think who it is.
I can see her, but I can't think of Kate Blanchett.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit with Judi Dench because she was so fabulous in that role. But you must read it. It's quite. I think the book, the film is quite faithful to the book. Actually, there's no sort of like, there's this big twist at the end that didn't happen in the book.
What would you say that if you were recommending someone that was like good for twists, who would you say that you'd recommend for like a twisty person? I know we're probably going to say the same person, but just curious.
Well, I mean, I mentioned her before. Erin Kelly is the queen of the twist, and I know she's writing the book that she's writing at the moment. We were talking in a group, And she was saying, yeah, it's my biggest twist yet. And I was just thinking, Jesus, the last one was big enough.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, how, like, I don't really know how you top that, to be honest.
Well, well, I'm really curious now, because I'm just going to think that, because I mean, ballet schools and all sorts and different random, you never know where she's going to put her characters, do you?
No. And that, yeah, you just don't know. And actually, one of my favourite books of Erin's is The Burning Air. Have you read that one?
I think, yes, I think I would have done, yeah.
That's got what I love about that, there's a big midpoint twist that turns everything on its head, rather than the kind of, curveball at the end that's supposed to leave the reader, agog. There is, you think it's one type of book, and then it all twists in the middle. And yeah, that's kind of my favourite, actually, rather than the big shocker at the end.
Yeah, as someone who's been described as a big planner in other interviews, would you say that you plan your plots out aiming for the twist, or does it try and come naturally after you've planned it?
I definitely plan them without a shadow of a doubt, to like literally in Excel, and I can sort of like color code stuff, so I can almost see where it might start to flag a little bit for readers, and then I will sort of go, no, you need to put, it's not always a twist, but you need some sort of cliffhanger or some level of intrigue here. But with every book, there's always something that just comes to me as I'm writing it. Certainly with Sweet Little Lies, I wouldn't call it I wouldn't call it a twist at the end, but it's just a revelation. Came to me quite late on, literally, maybe 2 weeks before I handed the book in.
That's complicated. I mean, that must have taken a hell of a lot of rewriting.
It didn't actually, and I won't. I mean, I'll tell you offline what I'm talking about. I won't say it here. It didn't actually, and that's probably why I was so excited about it. I could just go it in, and it took a little bit, but not a huge amount. But I'm not. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say my books are all about the twist. I mean, the Cat Kinsellas, their police procedurals, the twist is who did it, and hopefully it's not who you think. Or even a big thing for me is, clearly I don't want readers to guess too early, but I even don't mind too much if they guess a little bit before the end, as long as the why throws them a little bit. Yeah. Because I think the why is a lot more interesting than the who, to be honest. And that's what I always do plot and think about a lot. That yes, okay, it was that person, but it's not for the reason that you think.
Yeah, interesting, because having just read Sweet Little Lies, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I love a book with a sort of curveball at the end.
Yeah,
it has to make sense. That's the big thing. I'm using the word curveball, but if it's too much of a curveball, it can be frustrating. It needs to be something that actually you think, yeah, of course. How did I not see this? How did I not see this coming?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, and I'm really looking forward to reading your standalone. And
thank you.
When if you ever do get back to Kat, whatever you end up doing with her.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't imagine not writing another. I'm so focused on my standalone at the moment.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not writing another one. She needs some things resolved.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I would imagine we will revisit at some point.
Well, I shall see everybody in 2 weeks when I've got Kate Bendelow on. Talking about our first forensic debut. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody, and see you in a fortnight.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Are we off now?